how are the Crusades, Galileo's incredible telescope, and the rise of factories all connected? It sounds like a bit of a riddle, doesn't it?
It really does.
But these moments in history, seemingly so far apart, they're actually deeply intertwined. Each one played a pretty crucial role in shaping, well, the very foundations of our modern world.
That's absolutely right. Today, we're really going to dive deep into those foundational changes that swept through Europe, the ones that laid the groundwork for how we live now.
Mm-hmm.
And our sources for this deep dive, they come from a really detailed text looking at the European Renaissance, and then what came next, the development of science, the Industrial Revolution, and, their huge global impacts.
Okay, so our mission here is to pull out the most important insights, the key takeaways, really. We want to help you quickly grasp how these periods, this rebirth, this scientific explosion, this move to machines, how they all connected to transform societies, economies, even how we see the universe.
Yeah, get ready for some genuinely surprising facts, I think. Maybe a few aha moments along the way.
Definitely sounds like it. So let's unpack this. Where do we start? The Renaissance.
Let's start there. The term Renaissance itself means rebirth. And yeah, people often think of, Greek and Roman art, architecture, philosophy being rediscovered.
Right, the classics.
Exactly. But what our sources really stress is that it was much more than just looking back. It was like the dawn of a new era, one based on rationalism, on science.
Okay, so if it's the dawn of rationalism and science, how did that actually challenge the way people saw the world? The prevailing view where God was sort of the explanation for everything. What did that shift look like?
It was a massive shift. Before the Renaissance, think of it like this. The universe was mostly understood through theology. Divine explanations were the norm. But with this rebirth, thinking changed fundamentally. People got less focused on just accepting dogma and more interested in actively unfolding the mysteries of the universe. How? By observing, by using a scientific approach.
So it wasn't necessarily about ditching faith entirely.
Not necessarily, no. It was more about expanding the toolkit for understanding reality, adding observation and reason to the mix in a big way.
And this new way of thinking, this intellectual shift,
Yeah.
it must have rubbed up against established authority, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned humanism. How did that fit in?
Right. Humanism was a key philosophy then, and it really created fertile ground for resistance against the Catholic Church, which was incredibly powerful at the time.
How powerful are we talking?
Well, before this period, the church didn't just control religious life. It often dictated individual life, too, sometimes exploiting people through fees, and it heavily restricted free thinking.
Restricted how?
Severely. What's really striking, and our sources point this out, is that if you dared to interpret the Bible differently from the official church line, you could face the ultimate consequence. You could be sentenced to death. That just shows the immense power the church wielded. So humanism was instrumental in pushing back, creating space for intellectual freedom.
Wow, okay. And this scientific approach, it didn't just stay in philosophy or challenging the church, did it? You mentioned it permeated the arts, too.
Oh, absolutely. It seeped into everything. Take alchemy, for instance. It started shedding its more mystical roots, and began transforming towards what we now call chemistry.
Interesting.
And this growing chemical knowledge, it directly influenced painting. Think about the development of oil paints.
Ah, right. Oil paints. That allowed for such incredible detail, didn't it? Artists would capture tiny details in nature, depict things with amazing realism.
Exactly. And that same scientific spirit of observation led to incredibly detailed diagrams of the human body, internal organs, stuff done with unprecedented accuracy.
Think of Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo.
Precisely. There are prime examples of that blend, incredible artistic skill combined with rigorous scientific anatomical observation.
Okay, so we have this intellectual and artistic ferment happening. But now, the Crusades, it feels like a sharp turn.
Yeah.
How do they connect to this rebirth?
They might seem like a jump, yeah. A different time, different place, different motivations on the surface. But the Crusades actually set things in motion, unintended consequences, that fed right back into those forces of change we're talking about, the curiosity, the shifting worldviews of the Renaissance.
Okay, so give us the quick context. The Crusades started around 1096 CE.
That's right. A series of wars fought by European Christians. The main stated goal was to regain control of holy cities like Jerusalem and Bethlehem from Islamic rule.
But the motivations weren't purely religious, were they?
Oh, far from it. There was definitely genuine religious fervor, especially among ordinary people. The Pope promised forgiveness of sins, even immediate entry to heaven for fighters. That was a powerful draw.
Sure.
But our sources make it clear there were complex political and economic factors, too. Roman emperors saw a chance to expand their territory, bringing places like Syria and Asia Minor under their control.
And the money aspect.
Big time. Rich merchants, especially from Italian cities like Venice and Genoa, saw a massive opportunity. They wanted to establish trade routes and get access to those lucrative Central Asian markets.
So you had rulers and traders backing these wars for their own reasons.
Exactly, which maybe ironically contributed to the fact that the main military goals often failed. Saladin recaptured Jerusalem in 1187. Despite 9 major crusades over centuries, Jerusalem largely stayed under Islamic control.
But here's the twist, right? The failure on the battlefield had these massive, unexpected consequences back in Europe.
This is where it gets really interesting, yes. The unintended consequences were huge. It's amazing how sometimes what looks like a failure can actually spark massive change. Some historians even argue the Crusades marked the beginning of the end of feudalism in Europe.
The end of feudalism. Okay, maybe a quick refresher. What was feudalism, and why was its decline so significant?
Good point. Feudalism was that rigid social system of the Middle Ages. Land equaled power. Most people were serfs, tied to the land, working for lords in exchange for protection. Very hierarchical, very static.
Right.
So when lords and knights went off on crusades, sometimes for years, sometimes not coming back, it destabilized that whole structure. People started moving more, heading to growing towns and cities. Trade networks expanded. It even chipped away at the Pope's absolute authority as people saw the failures and started questioning things more.
So it kind of nudged Europe towards, well, modernity.
Yep.
Unexpectedly.
In a way, yes, an unexpected push. And that wasn't the only long-term impact.
It is.
Well, maybe more crucially, that contact with Central Asia during the Crusades dramatically increased trade. It opened up new routes and opportunities, especially for cities in Italy and Germany. This led directly to the rise of a powerful new class of traders and merchants.
And they weren't just trading goods. They were bringing back new
home.
stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Europeans got introduced to all sorts of things they hadn't really encountered before. Newer types of plants, fruits, perfumes, different clothing styles, sugar, which was huge, silk, cotton textiles, exotic spices, even medicinal herbs.
And ideas travel too.
Definitely. There was significant cultural exchange. Europeans actually adopted many Arabic words used in alchemy, music, and commerce. Even warfare changed. Europeans learned a lot about building forts, managing sieges, constructing bridges, destroying enemy supply lines from their interactions in the East.
So these holy wars, despite not achieving their main religious goal, ended up being this massive, unintentional catalyst for economic growth, cultural mixing, basically early globalization.
That's a great way to put it. It really shows how history takes these surprising turns. Failure in one area can lead to massive, unforeseen changes elsewhere.
Okay, so all these new goods, new ideas, this increased trade flowing into Europe, it feeds into the next big shift, doesn't it? The scientific revolution.
Exactly. It set the stage perfectly. The scientific revolution, really kicking off in the 17th century, was about building on that Renaissance curiosity but making it more systematic.
How so?
Natural scientists then really started emphasizing empirical experiments, testing things out. They focused on converting scientific rules into mathematical formulas, creating a whole new language for science, making it more precise, more verifiable.
Moving from just thinking about things to actually measuring and testing them.
Precisely. From philosophy towards verifiable fact. And astronomy was where some of the most dramatic breakthroughs happened, shaking core beliefs.
Like Copernicus.
Yes, Nicholas Copernicus, back in 1543, proposed that revolutionary idea. The sun, not the Earth, is the center of our planetary system. Hugely controversial at the time.
And came Galileo Galilei, known as the father of empirical science. His telescope was key.
Absolutely key. Galileo, active from the mid-16th to mid-17th century, built a more sophisticated telescope around 1609, and what he saw provided crucial evidence supporting the theories of Copernicus and another astronomer, Kepler.
Evidence like what?
Well, his observations provided concrete proof for what had been, until then, mostly theoretical models. And he famously challenged Aristotle, who was like the ultimate authority for centuries, with that demonstration from the Tower of Pisa.
Dropping the weights.
Exactly, showing objects of different weights fall at the same speed. Direct observation contradicting ancient authority, that was huge.
And he saw other things through his telescope.
Oh, yes. He observed Jupiter's 4 largest moons. That showed other planets had satellites, which challenged the idea of Earth being unique. He looked at our moon and saw it wasn't a perfect, smooth, self-luminous orb like Aristotle thought.
What did he see?
Mountains, valleys. He proved it reflected sunlight, just like Earth. He even calculated the sun's rotation about 27 days by observing sunspots moving across its surface.
Sunspots.
Mm-hmm.
And our sources mention something interesting here about an earlier observation.
Right. It's a fascinating note. Varamihir, an Indian scholar way back around the 6th century CE, had actually mentioned sunspots, calling them tamas kilakas in his work, the Brihat Samhita.
Wow. So centuries earlier, it really shows that scientific observation wasn't just a European thing, even back then.
Definitely not. It's a good reminder of the global history of scientific thought. Galileo's work was revolutionary in its context, but observation of the natural world has deep roots everywhere.
So beyond the cosmos, what other big inventions or institutions came out of this Renaissance and scientific revolution period?
Well, arguably one of the most impactful inventions ever, Johannes Gutenberg's printing press. Developed in Germany around 1440, reached Italy by 1451. Our sources call it an outstanding gift of the Renaissance.
It really was like the internet of its day, wasn't it? Completely changed how information spread.
That's a perfect analogy. Before Gutenberg, books were copied by hand. They were rare, expensive. Knowledge was mostly held by the church and the wealthy elite. Suddenly, movable type meant books could be produced relatively quickly and cheaply. Ideas, scientific, religious, political, could spread like wildfire across Europe. It massively accelerated everything, challenging old ideas and fueling new ones. It genuinely opened new avenues for knowledge for ordinary people.
Incredible. What else? Any other key inventions?
Yeah, a whole suite of them. The compass became more reliable, crucial for navigation. The microscope opened up the unseen world of microorganisms. The thermometer, the barometer, even gunpowder, while developed earlier, its application in warfare really changed things during this period.
And scientific principles were being figured out, too.
Yes. Robert Boyle, for example, discovered the relationship between pressure and gas volume, Boyle's law. That spurred research into gases like hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen. And Benjamin Franklin's work on lightning and electricity was groundbreaking. He even coined terms we still use.
And it wasn't just individuals. Institutions started popping up.
Right. You see the rise of more modern universities in the 18th century teaching not just theology, but also classics like Homer, Greek drama, ethics, and critically dedicated scientific organizations were founded.
Like the Royal Society in London.
Exactly. The Academy of the Lynx-eyed in Rome, the Royal Society for Improving Natural Knowledge in London, the French Academy of Sciences in Paris. These weren't just clubs. They published scientific journals, creating platforms for sharing research, debating ideas, building collective knowledge. It formalized and accelerated scientific progress.
Okay, so science is booming, there's new technology, and that leads directly into the age of exploration.
It does. There's a direct link. All this intellectual energy combined with a major geopolitical event really pushed Europeans outwards. That key event was in 1453 CE.
What happened then?
The Ottoman army conquered Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul. This was huge because Constantinople controlled the traditional land and sea routes eastwards to Asia.
Ah, the Silk Road routes, essentially.
Effectively, yes. That route became much harder or impossible for Europeans to use. So they had to find alternative ways to get to Asia, primarily by sea, to access spices, silks, and other valuable goods.
And that kicks off the famous voyages. Prince Henry, the Navigator of Portugal.
He was a key figure in the 15th century. He didn't sail much himself, but he sponsored and encouraged expeditions down the coast of Africa. These led to the Portuguese finding Madeira and the Azores Islands.
But there's a darker side noted in our sources here, isn't there?
Yes, a very dark side. These expeditions weren't just about discovery. The Portuguese started capturing African people, transporting them back to Portugal, and selling them into slavery. They also brought back African gold. This fueled demand for both gold and, tragically, for cheap human labor, significantly expanding the transatlantic slave trade. It's crucial to remember that shadow alongside the exploration.
Absolutely crucial. Okay, who else? Bartholomew Dias.
Also Portuguese. He was the first European known to sail around the southern tip of Africa, reaching what he initially called the Cape of Storms. It was later renamed the Cape of Good Hope because it showed a potential sea route to the east was possible.
And then the big one, Christopher Columbus.
Right. Italian, but sailing for Spain. He was convinced the Earth was round, which educated people generally knew by then, and thought he could reach India by sailing west across the Atlantic.
But he didn't reach India.
No, he famously landed on islands in the Caribbean near the Americas, still believing he was in the East Indies.
And America itself is possibly named after.
Amerigo Vespucci, another Italian explorer, he explored parts of South America, including Venezuela and the Amazon Delta. The idea is that map makers started naming the newly found continent after him.
But the actual sea route to India was finally found by
Vasco da Gama, Portuguese, in 1497. He successfully sailed around Africa and reached Calicut, that's Kozhikode, in India, in 1498. This opened up direct maritime trade between Europe and India, bypassing the old land routes. He later became the Portuguese viceroy in India.
and Ferdinand Magellan.
Sailing for Spain, he led the first attempt to circumnavigate the globe. He died during the voyage in the Philippines, but his remaining crew completed the journey, proving definitively the Earth was round and much larger than previously thought.
There are others too, right? Exploring different parts of the world.
Oh, many others. Samuel Champlain establishing Quebec in Canada, Abel Janzoon Tasman reaching New Zealand and parts of Australia, Captain James Cook, whose voyages in the Pacific were incredibly significant, surveying islands, New Zealand, Australia, making remarkably accurate maps.
And the French got involved.
Yes. Louis-Antoine de Bougainville reached Tahiti, leading to French colonization efforts. And explorers like Mungo Park traced major African rivers like the Niger. It was a global push.
But it's important, as our sources remind us, to remember earlier travelers too, right? This wasn't the absolute beginning of long-distance travel.
Absolutely. Marco Polo, centuries earlier, traveled extensively in Asia and brought back accounts of China that fascinated Europe. Ibn Battuta, the great Moroccan scholar, traveled even more widely across North Africa, the Middle East, India, Southeast Asia, China.
And Al-Biruni.
Yes, Al-Biruni, a brilliant scholar from Central Asia working around the 10th, 11th centuries. He visited India, wrote extensively about it, and even estimated the Earth's diameter with remarkable accuracy and understood its round shape. So European age of exploration built upon a much longer global history of travel, trade, and scientific inquiry.
Okay, so exploration opens up global trade routes, brings in resources, and that directly fuels the next huge transformation, the Industrial Revolution.
It's the perfect storm, really. The Industrial Revolution, mainly in the 18th and 19th centuries, was that massive shift from making things by hand, cottage industry, to making things with machines in factories, powered initially by water, then increasingly by steam.
And this wasn't just about technology, it changed the whole economic system.
Fundamentally, this revolution really required and was enabled by a capitalistic economy. You see the rise of a new class capitalists, factory owners, their focus. Minimum production costs, often meaning low wages, to achieve maximum profit. Private ownership of the means of production became central, along with the right of manufacturers to set prices.
Why did it kick off so strongly in England? What was special there?
England had several advantages. It had abundant natural resources, critically iron ore and coal. Coal was essential for powering steam engines and smelting iron. It also had a damp climate, which sounds odd, but it was actually ideal for spinning cotton yarn without it breaking, helping the textile industry boom.
Oh, okay.
But here's a crucial link our sources emphasize. England's vast colonial empire. This provided two vital things. One, huge quantities of essential raw material at cheap rates, think cotton from India or America. And two, captive markets to export the processed goods back to ensuring large profit margins.
And the colonies provided more than just materials and markets.
Yes, they also provided cheap labor, including enslaved labor in some contexts, and the profits generated from colonial exploitation provided capital that could be invested back into industry in Britain. That colonial connection was absolutely fundamental to England leading the Industrial Revolution.
So let's talk inventions. The textile industry seems like ground zero for a lot of this.
It really was. You get this rapid sequence of innovations. John Kay's flying shuttle in 1738 sped up weaving. Then James Hargreaves' spinning jenny allowed one worker to spin multiple threads.
Right.
Then Richard Arkwright's water frame mechanized spinning further in 1769. Samuel Crompton's spinning mule around 1779 combined features of the jenny and the frame and massively increased speed, like 200 times faster.
200 times.
Incredible, isn't it? Then Edmund Cartwright's power loom in 1785 started automating weaving. And finally, Eli Whitney's cotton gin in 1793 over in America made processing raw cotton much faster, feeding the hungry British mills. It was a chain reaction of invention.
Outside of textiles,
Yeah.
metallurgy.
Big changes there, too. The shift from using charcoal, made from wood, to coke, made from coal, in furnaces. This allowed for much higher temperatures, leading to increased iron production. And eventually, in 1865, methods for mass-producing steel from molten iron were developed. Steel was much stronger and more versatile.
And the steam engine, James Watt.
James Watt's improvements to the steam engine were pivotal. Initially, steam engines were mainly used to pump water out of coal mines, but Watt made them much more efficient.
So they could be used elsewhere.
Exactly. They were adapted for textile factories, freeing them from needing to be located right next to rivers for water power. They were used in agriculture, steam-powered plows and harvesters, and crucially, transport.
Steamboats and trains.
Yes, Robert Fulton's steamboat, the Clermont, revolutionized river travel. And George Stephenson's railway engine, his rocket, famously powered the line connecting Liverpool to Manchester, drastically cut land travel times. The world suddenly felt much smaller, and goods could move faster than ever before.
But this massive progress in Europe, particularly Britain, it came at a cost elsewhere, didn't it? Our sources mention India specifically being adversely affected.
Yes, the impact on places like India was devastating in many ways. India had a thriving handloom textile industry. Its fabrics were world-renowned, but it couldn't compete with the cheap, machine-made British textiles flooding its markets.
So local industry collapsed.
It severely declined, yes. The Indian cottage industry was crippled, and the policies of the British East India Company were explicitly designed to benefit Britain. They treated India as a source of raw materials like cotton and a market for British manufactured goods.
And the railways built there.
Our sources describe it as monetary exploitation. While railways did connect India, their primary purpose was often to transport British goods into the interior for sale and to get raw materials out to the ports efficiently, further undermining local economies and benefiting British industry.
This leads us directly to what our sources call economic nationalism, an outcome of the Industrial Revolution.
A direct outcome, yes. The Industrial Revolution created immense economic power, and nations started to compete fiercely.
What was the core idea of economic nationalism?
Simply put, prioritize your own nation's economic growth above all else. And critically, do so while actively trying to arresting the economic growth of rival nations. It was viewed very much as a zero-sum game. My gain is your loss.
And how did nations practice this? What were the tools?
They used several methods: prohibiting or heavily taxing imports from rival nations, levying heavy tolls on their ships or goods passing through, and, very significantly, establishing colonies.
Colonies were key to this.
Absolutely. Colonies in Asia and Africa were seen as essential sources of cheap raw materials and guaranteed markets for manufactured goods, completely controlled by the colonizing power. They'd even fight battles with local populations to secure these resources and markets.
So it created a kind of cycle.
A vicious cycle, really. Constantly needing to capture new markets, find cheaper sources of raw materials, secure trade routes and supply chains, attract investment, and protect those investments, often through military force.
And this whole process, this aggressive economic competition, fueled by industrial power and colonial expansion, that's essentially imperialism.
Exactly. Economic nationalism was the engine driving imperialism. It led directly to the scramble for colonies and the immense expanse of the European empires, Britain, France, Belgium, Germany, and others, carving up vast swaths of the globe in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Economic power and political domination became completely intertwined on a global scale.
Wow. So if we try to connect all these dots,
Yeah.
it's quite a chain reaction over centuries.
It really is. You can trace a line, maybe not perfectly straight, but a definite connection. The intellectual awakening of the Renaissance fuels the scientific revolution's breakthroughs. Meanwhile, events like the Crusades unintentionally boost trade and expose Europe to new ideas and goods. The fall of Constantinople forces Europeans to seek new sea routes, leading to the Age of Exploration.
Which finds new lands, resources.
Exactly, and those resources in the capital generated, often through exploitation and colonialism, feed the Industrial Revolution's machines and factories back in Europe.
And that industrial might then fuels intense economic nationalism and the race for global empires.
Precisely. From Renaissance ideas to global empires, there's a complex but discernible path driven by curiosity, technology, economics, and often ruthless competition.
It's a powerful narrative, tracing those connections. And thinking about our world today, so interconnected, so driven by technology and global markets, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How do these historical patterns, innovation, the scramble for resources, economic policies driven by national interest, that quest for power, how do they still shape our present?
That's the big question, isn't it? What lessons can we actually draw from these long-term consequences, the intended and the very unintended, of these historical pursuits?
Definitely something to think about long after this deep dive ends.